knew something was wrong the moment my mom stepped off the airport shuttle, looking tanned, relaxed, and way too cheerful for someone who'd just spent a week in paradise while I stayed home working double shifts. But the real shock hit me when my sister came running up behind, her dragging a brand new suitcase, wearing a shirt that literally said "Best Trip Ever," and waving a stack of souvenir bags like she'd just won a game show. And I swear, when she hugged me, she whispered, "Thanks for not coming. It was way more fun without you." I don't know if she meant it as a joke, but it felt like someone had thrown a bucket of ice water on my entire spine. That was the moment everything inside me snapped, and I started wondering, was I wrong for what I eventually did? Would any of you have acted differently if your own parents looked you dead in the eyes and said they could only afford to take one of their kids on a family vacation, and it wasn't going to be you? Because that's exactly what happened to me. And trust me, this story gets worse before it gets better. So here's everything, and I mean everything. Tell me honestly, after hearing this, would you have handled it the same way? Because sometimes I still wonder if I should feel guilty, or if this whole thing was the moment my parents finally exposed how little I meant to them compared to my sister. It all started months before that awful airport pickup day, back when life in our house felt normal enough, or at least normal for a family, where favoritism was practically baked into the walls. My younger sister Lily had always been the golden child. Pretty bubbly, effortlessly social, straight-A student without even trying. And then there was me, responsible, quiet, the mature one, the one who always understood, the one who always compromised, the one who apparently could always go without. But every family has dynamics like that, right? Or at least that's what I told myself growing up. It wasn't until the vacation situation that I realized how deeply those dynamics ran. The whole thing started innocently enough at dinner one night. My parents were talking about needing a break, how work had been overwhelming, how they wanted to take a family trip before the summer ended. I got excited because we hadn't done anything together as a family in years. Maybe since I was 13. And now I was 19, juggling college classes and a part-time job, trying to keep myself afloat while still helping out around the house. A family vacation sounded like exactly the kind of reset we all needed. For a few days, I actually let myself look forward to it. I researched destinations, checked weather patterns, even looked at flight options for fun. Not that they asked. But then one evening, my parents called me into the living room with those stiff, uncomfortable expressions adults get when they're about to say something they know sounds awful. My stomach dropped instantly. My dad started with, "Sweetie, we need to talk about the summer trip," and immediately I knew something bad was coming. My mom took over in that gentle voice she uses when she wants to sound caring, even though she's about to deliver emotional damage. She said, "We've been budgeting, and the reality is, we can't afford to take both you and your sister this year." At first I thought she meant postpone or scale back. But then she added, "So we've decided that Lily will go on the trip with us this time." Just like that, like it was obvious, like it didn't even require a conversation, like I was the natural choice to leave behind. I remember blinking at them, waiting for the punchline. But they looked serious. Dead serious. I asked why it had to be Lily. I asked how they could possibly justify choosing one kid over the other. They exchanged a look, the kind that said they'd rehearsed this conversation. And my dad mumbled something about how Lily deserved a reward for finishing high school with honors, and she'd been under a lot of pressure, and it's her last summer before college. I just stared at them because I was also in college. I was working to pay for that college. I'd been under pressure for years, but apparently none of that qualified me for a vacation. I felt this mix of confusion, disbelief, and this burning humiliation in my chest. It was the first time I realized they didn't just favor her, they valued her more. I asked why we couldn't choose a cheaper destination so we could all go. My mom sighed dramatically and said, "We already booked the resort. We can't change it now." That hurt even more. They'd planned the trip without even asking about my schedule or my life. My presence had never been factored into it. I excused myself and went to my room before I said something I couldn't take back. I cried that night, something I hadn't done in years, because it wasn't about missing a vacation. It was about being told, straight to my face, that I just didn't make the cut. The weeks leading up to the trip were torture. Lily couldn't stop talking about it. Every day she had a new outfit arriving in the mail, new beach accessories, new shoes, new everything. My parents were just as excited. They all buzzed around the house like a perfect little trio. I felt like a ghost haunting my own home. My mom kept telling me I was handling this very maturely, as if I'd been given a choice. Meanwhile, I picked up extra shifts at work so I wouldn't have to be home listening to their vacation countdown. The resentment built quietly, slowly, like water rising behind a dam. And the whole time I kept thinking, maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe they didn't mean it the way it sounded. Maybe I'm being dramatic. But the truth was, I had been sidelined my entire life. It just took this moment to finally make me see it. When they finally left for the airport that morning, I pretended to be asleep so I wouldn't have to say goodbye. I listened from my room as they wheeled suitcases out the door, laughing and talking about all the fun they were going to have. When the door closed and the house went silent, I sat up in bed, staring at the wall, realizing I'd never felt so alone. A week passed. I worked, I studied, I cooked for myself, I slept. And every day I saw photos they posted online. My parents smiling on boat tours, my sister posing on beaches, fancy dinners, sunsets, matching outfits. Not once did anyone text me to check in. Not even a "how are you doing?" or "everything okay at home?" Nothing. And then the airport pickup day arrived. The day everything boiled over. My parents got off the shuttle looking happier than I'd ever seen them. My sister practically danced her way toward me, bragging about how exclusive the resort was, how unbelievable the food was, how she totally thought of bringing something back for me. But like everything was kinda expensive. My parents didn't say anything about missing me or wishing I'd been there. Instead, my dad handed me a plastic airport bag with a single keychain inside. A keychain from a trip I wasn't allowed on. The insult was unreal. That night, everything spilled out. I confronted them, shaking with anger and hurt. I asked how they could do something so blatantly cruel. And you know what my mom said? "You're being dramatic. It was just a vacation. Just a vacation." As if being excluded by your own family wasn't devastating. As if the message, that I didn't matter, wasn't loud and clear. I told them I wasn't going to be treated like an afterthought anymore. That I wasn't going to keep sacrificing my time, my money, my emotional energy for people who didn't see me as worth a plane ticket. And now here's the part where I need your opinion. Because this is where everything turned into a full-blown family explosion. After that argument, I stopped doing anything for the household. No cooking, no cleaning, no helping with bills, nothing. I focused entirely on myself. Then I did something my parents absolutely didn't expect. I moved out. I found a small studio near campus, and I left without warning the moment my lease started. I didn't leave a dramatic note or anything. I just packed and left. When my parents came home that day, they found my room empty and my key on the kitchen table. They blew up my phone for hours, demanding I explain myself, accusing me of being ungrateful and childish. They told me I'd broken the family apart, that I'd abandoned them, that Lily was crying because she felt responsible. And that's when I snapped again. I told them Lily was responsible. So were they. I told them I wasn't coming home. I wasn't helping financially anymore, and I didn't want contact unless they were ready to acknowledge how badly they'd hurt me. So that's the mess I was in. Before I tell you the final confrontation and everything that happened afterward, I want you to genuinely think about this. If your parents openly chose your sibling over you for something as significant as a family vacation and acted like it was no big deal, what would you have done? Pause for a moment and tell me in the comments. Would you have stayed? Would you have forgiven them? Would you have moved out like I did? Because I really want to know if I was completely justified or totally out of line. Okay, so here's what happened next. A week after I moved out, my parents showed up at my apartment unannounced. They didn't even knock gently. They pounded on the door like they were the police. I opened it just enough to see their faces. They were furious. My mom demanded that I come home right now, and my dad started lecturing me about responsibilities, respect, and family unity. I felt something inside me harden. I told them calmly that I wasn't coming back to a place where I felt like an outsider. They insisted they never meant to hurt me, that choosing Lily wasn't about favoritism, that I was older and more self-sufficient. But that was exactly the problem. They only valued me when I was useful, not when I needed love or acknowledgement. I told them that, out loud, and for the first time in my life, they didn't have a rehearsed answer ready. They just stood there silent. Then Lily stepped forward. She had tears in her eyes and she said, "I didn't ask them to leave you out. I swear." And maybe she was telling the truth. But she still benefited. She still went. She still rubbed it in. I told her I didn't blame her entirely, but she never once stood up for me, not when she should have. She looked shocked because no one had ever held her accountable before. My parents got defensive again, telling me I was being cruel and unfair. But I held my ground. I told them I needed distance. I needed boundaries. And I needed them to understand that what they did wasn't a small mistake. It was years of favoritism, reaching its breaking point. Eventually they left. Not happily, not gracefully. But they left. And for months afterward, the relationship was strained to the point of silence. They didn't call. I didn't call. I focused on myself, my classes, my job, my mental health. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I had control over my own existence. It was freeing. Painful, but freeing. But here's the twist. On Thanksgiving, my mom reached out. She asked if we could talk. I agreed cautiously. When I arrived at their house, the atmosphere was different, quieter, more serious. My parents apologized. Not perfectly, not eloquently, but genuinely enough that I felt the weight of it. They admitted they had handled the situation horribly. They admitted they'd prioritized my sister for years, without realizing how deeply it cut me. They admitted they'd taken advantage of my maturity. And for the first time, I saw real remorse in their eyes. Not excuses, not justifications, real remorse. We talked for hours, and while I didn't forgive them instantly, the wall between us finally cracked. Lily apologized too. Again, not perfectly, but sincerely. She said she'd been selfish without realizing it, and I believed her. Eventually, we rebuilt our relationship slowly. Not completely, not magically, but intentionally. And now things are better. Not perfect, but better. And it all started because I finally stood up for myself, even when it meant leaving everything behind. So here's my final thought. Sometimes the people who love you don't realize they're hurting you until you force them to see it. And sometimes the only way to be treated like you matter is to walk away from people who treat you like you don't. If you were on my side through this whole mess, like this video, subscribe for more stories like this because I have plenty more where this came from. And please, share your final thoughts in the comments. I really want to know what you'd have done. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you all in the next story.